at bingo, and the boys are getting stinkle. We think no more of Inco on a Saturday night.
Stomp, as in a downward motion with the heel or foot on a hard surface, such as the ground or floor, or perhaps a custom-made stomp platform with tambourines all over it. As my band High Five Drive came to a close in 2010, I wanted to keep playing music, but on my own. It seemed I was pretty limited in terms of what I could really pull off as a solo act. Either I grew a beard, grabbed an acoustic, and took a swipe at the singer-songwriter thing, or became a DJ. Neither option appealed to me. Both seemed to already have full playing fields of people more talented than I who had already been doing those things for years, and those people were barely making it at best. Besides, I wanted to do something that made me sweat. A solo show I could put everything I had into night after night. Something loud and annoying. Kind of like me. It wasn't until that summer when I saw a band called Hoots and Hellmouth at the Winnipeg Folk Festival that it hit me. Hoots were setting up large wooden platforms they carried onto the stage with tambourines attached. As they played, they were stomping and dancing away on the platforms, and it was great. I loved it from the moment it started, and I wanted to do a punk rock version of that. My roommate at the time, who was a carpenter, built me my own punk rock stomp box, and I was off. I started to write songs and booked my first tour with Edmonton Buds Fire Next Time the following spring. 10 years, over 1,000 shows, and a few stomp box versions later, I'm still stomping my way around the world. But I certainly didn't invent stomping, or anything like that. I like to think I do it well, but who did it first? Is it older than music itself even? Stomping is a very basic form of percussion. Feeling the rhythm, like a heartbeat, was something we humans seem to have been equipped for as far back as we can go. But does it predate melody? Melody could be one of the earliest and universal forms of communication prior to speech. Most likely early human-ish type creatures were capable of mimicking naturally occurring sounds and rhythms. The Gibbon's monkey has quite a lot to say. Our last common ancestor with them is something like 16 million years ago, so we are somewhat related. But is it really music they are belting out, or just a mating call or an "I'm awesome" kind of yell? Gorillas or other apes have been known to beat their chests, and chimps have been observed moving rhythmically in groups. But the capacity to keep a steady rhythm is very limited in primates, so doubtful they were really getting in on some sweet drum circles or anything like that. I guess it's not as important which came first, but at some point we started putting melody and rhythm together. I realized to define what is music can be subjective, and I don't want to rag on anyone playing at the outer fringes of what might be considered music. However, if I had to go on record, I feel whoever first played a melody to a rhythm is when music started being music. But what about stomping? Charles Thomas Conners, better known as Stomping Tom, is a Canadian country folk singer and the first person I picture when I think of stomping. He is credited writing over 300 songs and boasts 4 million albums sold between his dozens of releases. It wasn't until Canada's 100th birthday in 1967 at the King George Tavern in Peterborough, Ontario, that Conners got his name, however. Conners had been performing for a while already and was known for stomping the heel of his left boot when he played. The name Stomping Tom Conners was first used by the waiter who introduced Tom on stage that night, and it just kind of stuck. Tom had the name officially registered in Ontario as Stomping Tom Limited the following week. Way to go, Tom. But I don't think he invented stomping. Acapella is a style of music featuring singing without instrument accompanying. In Italian, acapella means in chapel or choir style, and is often thought to be as old as human civilization itself. I have to confess, I always thought a cappella was one word. Many people who perform a cappella will stomp or clap the rhythm as they sing. Perhaps this is more the beginning of the use of stomping in music. Early 20th century artists like Sunhouse helped pry this style of music from mostly religious applications and dragged it over to the Delta blues scene, although House was a preacher himself. He would stomp or clap to keep the beat as he belted out the lyrics, and had been an influence to Robert Johnson and Muddy Waters. Huddy William Ledbetter, or better known as Leadbelly, was another ally of the Delta blues sound. He was also known for clapping or stomping as he rocked out, and played a ton of instruments, including the 12-string guitar, the piano, mandolin, harmonica, violin, and windjammer. The windjammer was basically a diatonic button accordion, as opposed to the more traditional piano key layout. He had a ton of hits under his belt, and his songs have been covered by literally hundreds of artists, from Elvis to Nirvana. In 1977, Queen's We Will Rock You channeled that basic instinct to stomp or clap along. Being a mostly a cappella song with a 30-second guitar solo at the end, it was unique and transformed any audience into kind of an aux percussion section of the band. It made it on Rolling Stone's top 500 songs of all time at 330, but probably should have been a bit higher. Stomp is also a percussion group created by Steve McNicholas and Luke Cresswell in Brighton, UK in 1991. The performers use their bodies, as well as ordinary objects, acrobatics, and pantomime to create a huge theatrical production. McNicholas and Cresswell had their humble beginnings as street performers in 1981 as the band Pookie Snackin' Burger. Together with a theater group, they presented a series of street comedy musicals at the Edinburgh Festival throughout the early 1980s. Stomp is still performing, including a few highlights, such as a residency in Vegas in the late 2000s, as well as the closing ceremonies at the 2012 Olympics in London. Tap dancing, I guess, technically could be considered stomping, just tiny little fast stomps, maybe. The website Scotsman.com claims Michael Flatley, the creator of Riverdance and Lord of the Dance, clocks in at 35 taps per second in 1998. James Devine, however, an Edinburgh-based Irish tap dance teacher, boasts 38 taps per second, which he claims has been verified by Guinness. The book, not the beer. I went to the Guinness site, and there was no category for most taps per second. However, there was most taps per minute, which is held by Anthony Mori Gerardo in 2011 at Eleanor's School of Dance in Albany, New York. Anthony tapped 1,063 times in a minute, doing 293 reverse paddles. There are several other tap dance records, including the largest tap dance lesson ever, coming in at 445 people. The longest distance ever tap danced was 32 kilometers, or about 20 miles, or 352 football fields. Stomping or clapping, or even just nodding our heads to the beat, is something most of us do not even realizing it. Feeling the rhythm is often involuntary and has probably been around even longer than human thought, maybe. Oliver Wendell Holmes, a poet of the 19th century, said, "Most of us go to our graves with our music still inside us, unplayed." Music is in all of us. It can be hard to put your ego or insecurities aside and sing with everything you got like no one is listening. I hope to do a million more things before I'm 6 feet under, but when my time comes, I want to try to remember one of the greatest things I ever did was let the music out.
With Irish Jim O'Connell there and Scotty Jack McDonald, there's Hunky Frederick.